Waiting to see if joins. Brian, can you go on camera, please? Can you hear us?
I can. Do you want me to turn on my camera or turn it off?
Yeah, could you please turn on your camera? And then just keep it on for the duration of the.
Okay, welcome to the December 17th, 2025 Environmental Quality Commission meeting. This is an in-person meeting and virtual meeting with Environmental Quality Commission EQC members, city staff, and members of the public. Roll call. I would like to now introduce staff and EQC members present. In the room, we have Chair McKenna, Vice Chair Meyer, Commissioners Angel, Headley, Hernandez, and Hill. Commissioner Kissel is participating virtually through provisions in the Brown Act. Staff present is Sustainability Manager Rachel Launder and Management Analyst 2, Ori Paz. Ms. Launder, would you please provide instructions to the Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to share a process for public comment this evening. If you're in the room and you'd like to make public comment on an item, we have speaker cards over there and you can grab one, fill it out, and hand it to myself or Ori. If you're online, you can press the raise hand button, which is either next to your name or at the bottom of your screen, depending on your device. And if you're calling in, you can press *9 and we'll be able to unmute you. We can provide public comment for up to 3 minutes this evening, and we'll have time for public comment for items not on the agenda, as well as public comment.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to item C, public comment. So under public comment, the public may address the Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the Commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. While you are not required to provide your name or city of residence, it is helpful. The Commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the Commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment, other than to provide general information. Sustainability Manager Launder, can you please call for public comment?
Sure. If you'd like to make public comment for items not on the agenda, we have public comment cards over there. If you're in the room, if you're online, you can hit the raise hand button, and if you're calling in, you can press *9. I don't see any hands raised online or one card in the room. Okay, let me get our timer going and then we can start. Okay. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks. Good evening, Brian Schmidt for Menlo Spark. I wanted to update the Commission on 2 developments last week that are relevant to the Commission's climate goals and the city's climate goals. First one was on Wednesday. The Bay Area Air District had a meeting of its Stationary Source Committee, which is reviewing their rules, stating that new equipment installed after 2027 has to be 0 NOx. They're including some flexibility into it, but this committee was now reviewing it for the first time in a while and was very favorable about keeping the rules with the flexibility involved. So that I would perceive that to be good news. They also referenced a pilot project that Menlo Spark had developed, electrifying 5 units of multifamily housing on a single 200 amp panel. The next development, which was not as good, was from the California Air Resources Board, which also had a 0 emissions standard that they were developing. They announced that they were backtracking significantly on that, moving from the 0 emission standard to a market cap and ramp down proposal, which would not even hit the goal of 0 emissions by 2045 and would extend emissions from newly installed equipment long past the 2045 deadline that the state is looking at for climate neutrality. So we'll continue to work on those issues. Thought I'd pass that along. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I don't have any other public comment cards in the room. Check last time on Zoom. No hands on Zoom, so we can close public comment for items not on the agenda and turn the meeting to you, Chair.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to item D, regular business. D1, approve the October 15th, 2025 Environmental Quality Commission meeting minutes. Are there any clarifying questions from the EQC before we take public comment? Seeing none, Ms. Launder, do we have any public comment on this item?
Sure, let me open up public comment for item D1, approve the October 15th, 2025 Environmental Quality Commission meeting minutes. If you're in the room, you know the drill. If you're online, the raise hand button, and if you're calling in, press *9. Okay, no hands or cards, so we can close public comment and return the meeting.
Great, thank you. Is there any EQC discussion on this item? Would someone like to make a motion? You? A second?
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Headley and a second by Commissioner Hill to approve the October 15th, 2025 Environmental Quality Commission meeting minutes. And I will take a roll call vote since we have one commissioner online. Chair McKenna.
Were those the?
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Angel.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner Headley.
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez.
Abstain, yeah.
Commissioner Kissel
Aye.
and Vice Chair Meyer.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes with 6 in favor and 1 abstaining. Thank you.
Great. We will now move on to item D2. Deny the appeal and uphold staff's decision to approve the permit application to remove 14 City of Menlo Park heritage trees at 60 Willow Road. So for this item, I will recuse myself based on past professional relationship and reasonable likelihood of future business transactions with the applicant. Sustainability Manager Rachel Launder will take over.
Yeah. Okay. So staff received a request from the appellant who submitted their initial appeal on November 17th to extend further into the 60-day review period outlined in the Heritage Tree Ordinance Administrative Guidelines. This request was received with a reasonable amount of time. So the EQC has the ability to continue this item to the January meeting. Staff is recommending that the EQC continue this item to January 21st at 6 p.m. And at that, in order to do that, the EQC will need to vote tonight to continue the item to a time and date certain. We can proceed with approving the continuation of the item to the January 21st, 2026 meeting at 6 p.m. by acclamation or a roll call vote. So I think acclamation is a newer process for us. So if folks are interested, if the commissioners are interested in continuing the item to January 21st, it's really just a simple nod. And if there's a disagreement, just raise your hand and we can go into roll call vote. Okay. By acclamation, this item was continued to January 21st, 2026 at 6 p.m. And questions, comments, public comments will be heard at that time. And I will go grab our chair. And if you're here for this item, thank you for coming, but we'll see you in January. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, well, that's the room. That's the one, I'm still here.
Okay, proceed.
We can proceed.
Okay, we'll move on to item D3, update on installation of solar at city facilities. The sustainability staff will present this item. Yeah.
Yeah, well, sure.
Thank you.
Feel free to get started.
Yes. Just checking to see, we went through the first item quite quickly. So we do have some folks from the program manager, Ross Fisher from Clean Energy, who's been our partner at PCE, will be joining us. We told him to join at 6:15. So we were very efficient in starting this meeting, and then we'll also have someone from McMillan Electric who managing the installation of the systems join us a little bit later. So if there are more technical questions or questions about the future of the program, we'll hold that. Maybe we'll hold all of the questions till the end, and then give them a little bit of time to join us. But I can go ahead and get started now with this very exciting update
It's thinking thing.
on installation of solar at city facilities. Next slide, please. So we'll provide a little bit of the background and then information about Peninsula Clean Energy or PCE's program. This again is the Solar and Storage for Public Facilities program. Then we'll talk about the city facilities that were selected, the system sizes that we were looking at, as well as the progress to date, and a look ahead, specifically at the city hall systems, which are coming soon. So again, this fits within the policy framework of our climate action plan. Specifically, this is an initiative that's going to help us to achieve Climate Action Plan Strategy 5, to eliminate fossil fuels from city operations. This will help us to secure an advantageous electricity price and some resilience benefits in the later phases. And then all of that helps us to very effectively electrify. Sorry, I thought the train was gonna honk again. And what we're looking for with that electrification, as everyone knows, is the air quality improvements, the greenhouse gas reductions, and then there's new resilience opportunities for full electrification, and the solar and batteries really make that come to life. Next slide, please. And so we've been very fortunate to have a partner in Peninsula Clean Energy in supporting all of the jurisdictions within San Mateo County and Los Banos. Again, most folks are familiar with them. They're our electricity provider with a mission to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and expand access to clean and affordable electricity. And so they stand up a number of programs that we've been able to take advantage of. This is one of my favorites. That's great. Yeah. Because it really helps us as local government to expand our capacity. So as part of this program, there's no upfront cost, which is great. PCE and their contractors handle the design and the procurement and the construction management. And as on our end, we manage the coordination across all of the departments and finalizing the site placement and those things. And by dividing up the responsibility in that way, we've been able to take on, solar for 4 facilities that otherwise would not have been possible. They also have a very generous as a nonprofit. They're not looking to make a profit on it, so they're passing through the costs fairly. So our PPA rate is amazing. I guess the structure of it essentially is we enter into a power purchase agreement. Peninsula Clean Energy will own the systems and then they manage the construction and then the maintenance for 20 years, which is another really important piece. And then at the end of that, we have the option, actually a couple of times, we have the option to purchase the systems. The technology that we're installing, this newest generation of solar panels, we're expecting to live for 40 years. And so there was a lot of work on the city side to accelerate roof replacements so that the roofs under the systems will have a useful life as long as or beyond, so we can maximize the savings that we see from these systems. And the key piece here is we essentially pay for this through our electricity bills. So we were able to lock in a price for like per kilowatt hour for each of these facilities. That's close to half of what we're looking at through the regular rate, and so there's significant savings, as we'll talk about, that come as a result of that.
And Ross just joined us.
Okay. I think I did this one. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. So yes, there was a lot of coordination in 2023 where we identified sites, submitted applications, they were evaluated by PCE and their contractors. We narrowed it down to 4 qualifying sites, which I think are on the next slide. Yep. So the Menlo Park Library here at the Burgess campus, City Hall, which is a combination of a rooftop system and then 2 solar carports that are going to be in the parking lot between this facility and the gymnastics center. And then there's a system for the Burgess pool that's on the gymnastics center roof, which is confusing. So if you look at the PPA, it'll say it's for the pool because it's going to be providing electricity for the pool. And then finally, we were able to include a system for the Belhaven Child Development Center. Slide, please. And so, as you can see, the percentages that we're looking at in these charts. So in yellow is representative of the percentage of that site's annual usage that will be provided by the solar, and then in blue is the grid power that will be needed. And so you can see for City Hall and the library, we're looking at between 90 and 95%. These are estimates based on the initial designs. The library is almost completely finished, and so we'll be getting updated performance estimates and guarantees, and so we should get a kind of a refinement on the final numbers. But the outlook is great for these facilities, and in particular, wanted to highlight the Belhaven Child Development Center. PCE was actually very flexible and accommodating. We had planned electrification projects at that facility. They were gracious enough to allow us to include it. And so we've been working very hard to deliver on that electrification project. And it's, so it's 126% of usage now, but it should balance out right around 100% of the projected usage at that site. And then it creates an opportunity for when the battery is installed to have a very resilient net zero facility, kind of like its neighbor facility at the Belhaven Community Campus. The numbers are also exciting. If we look only at our projected bill savings, we're looking at just over $3 million over the 20-year term in savings. Again, that's from utility bills, and then after that, everything is generated from the panels, and so I'm trying not to say is gravy, but we start to see more significant savings in year 21, 22, 23, and so the overall financial picture is very, very exciting. As far as the process and timeline, we've gone through, again, there was an application selection, a lot of the agreements that we brought to City Council to authorize the city manager, many months of design. We're almost there, finishing design, as you can see, that just a little bit of the corner of that box, and then we're well into construction. And then following construction, there will be an operation phase. Next slide, please. And so when we look at the current status, you can see on the left is the Menlo Park Library. It's nearly complete. All the panels have been installed. They're just working on some final documentation to give us updates with the plans that reflect field conditions, and then it'll be energized by PG&E. we actually are starting construction very soon on City Hall. So you may have noticed, hopefully A-frame signs and a digest item telling you about rooftop solar that's set to commence this week. And then the scaffolding that just went up today. We're over halfway completed on the Burgess Pool system that's on the gymnastics center. And they'll be finishing that up with this construction mobilization. So they have teams that'll go over to finish that. And then the Bellhaven Child Development Center is also nearly complete, and kind of similar documentation and final energization by PG&E needed. Next slide, please. So as we look ahead, these are very exciting projects, but we will need to coordinate to actually construct them. And so there will be some minor parking disruptions for the rooftop scope. So you may notice that in the parking lot, there are 5 parking spaces that have been dedicated to materials. The accessible parking spaces for this facility are still available, as are the EV charging spaces. So I want to make sure that folks are aware of that. And then as we get into the carport system construction in late January, half of the parking lot will be closed temporarily. So we're looking at approximately a 5-week closure for that. And so we'll be planning, we have planned additional outreach that's going to kick off in the new year to let folks know about alternate parking locations, alternate means of coming to the facilities, and there won't be any changes to facility operations during the work. And so if you're not already subscribed to the weekly digest, please take a look there. And then we have a new City Solar project webpage that will be posting updates about this project, and then the exciting progress that's being made over at Kelly Park on the final phase of the microgrid for BHCC. And then with that, I think, thank you. Yes, thank you. And then again, we do have Ross Fisher from Instant Clean Energy with us. And so if there are clarifying or more technical questions, we are both available to answer those.
And I just, Janine,
Let's see,
Rob,
Ryan.
it's I think there's a delay, but they should be popping up soon on our
Okay.
monitor.
Great. Well, thank you for exciting presentation. Are there any clarifying questions from EQC before we take public comment?
Do you see Brian's hand up?
Yeah.
Yes, I have a question. I think you said that part of the project was to do the library as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The Menlo Park Library, that system is I would say, Ross, what do you call it? 95% done?
It's substantially completed.
Oh,
Absolutely.
it's mostly done. Okay.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if any analysis was done. I know in the housing element, there's been discussion about potentially doing some development down the road that could include the library. And I'm wondering, is this going to be reusable if for whatever reason we end up redeveloping the library and making it, a different configuration than it is today?
I mean, from an electrical perspective, if the meter remains, it will still serve the load at that facility, regardless of any structural changes. So from an interconnection perspective, it would be the same. From a facility offset, perhaps that change would also result in load growth. So that percentage offset that Ori represented, that may shrink if the facility were to grow and in turn the loads grow. But we are locked in once this system is complete and receives what we call permission to operate. We're then grandfathered for 20 years into the legacy net energy metering 2 program.
Oh, excellent. So I understand with NEM2, you have the ability to add like 10% without losing your NEM2 rate plan. So that would be the constraint. If for whatever reason the library was constructed to be a much larger facility, we could add 10% capacity and not lose our NEM2
You've got it. You've done your homework. 10% or 1 kW, whichever is greater. 10% is indeed going to be greater as far as system expansion. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner Kissel and Ross. Any other clarifying questions?
On slide 8 for the Bellhaven Child Development Center, there's 126% solar power generation. Can you clarify what 126% solar generation means?
Yes, so it's based on, I can,
Yeah, go ahead, Ori.
do you want to go?
No, you've been doing
You
a
joined us
fantastic.
in this evening, you should go ahead. Go ahead, Ross.
You've been doing it so eloquently. Sorry to cut in. So what that means is we take the historical usage, and this system was sized, as Ori had mentioned, for additional load growth. So based on the historical usage, the solar production would offset 125% of the usage. But since there's electrification measures happening, we oversize the system in an effort to grow into those additional electrification measures.
Thank you.
Yep.
I had a couple. Were all of the buildings sized for future full electrification? And specifically the pool for future heat pumps?
Yeah, so the pool was a tricky one because, and Ross, feel free to hop in, but there were actually some tax credit restrictions that explicitly prevented the use of solar for pool heating, and so it would have made us ineligible for some of those ITC tax credits. So that was part of why the size of the system for the pool did not include pool heating, because it would have changed the financial picture of the project. And then I'll say that the other systems, it was kind of a combination of what was the available space that was reasonable, and then maybe Ross, you can speak to it in a little bit more detail.
You hit the 2 points. Oftentimes it's available real estate. How large are we able to actually increase the system? So space constraint is a big one. And then Ori did touch upon there is a tax credit issue. And as a nonprofit, we receive it through what's called direct pay, but we cannot, unfortunately, have the solar photovoltaic system sized and set to serve any pool heating loads. So those are the 2 primary factors in limiting the system size.
And then we, as part of the site analysis and the early phases, we were looking at different combinations of like more carport arrays versus the rooftops, and we really wanted to try to get as many onto the roof as possible, because it's a much better rate, and so the savings are much greater for those. And then there are fewer issues with conflicts with trees and some of the other priorities that we have for the sites. So we thought we struck a good balance with the system sizes, adding onto the existing capacity, and then we were also able to preserve a lot of the trees in our parking lots at the Burgess campus.
Great. The batteries, are those going to be used for energy arbitrage or just resilience, or did all the facilities get batteries?
So with the batteries are a kind of a next phase, and maybe I'll turn to Ross to speak to PC's plans related to the storage side of the storage and solar and storage program.
Sure, absolutely. So just to kind of start, we embarked upon these projects looking to get grandfathered into the way more advantageous Net Energy Metering 2 program. In order to reduce complications and have success on completing these projects, we aim to simplify the projects and start with solar only. Once we finish the solar only and receive permission to operate from PG&E, at any point thereafter within the interconnection agreement, which is 20 years, we can add an energy storage system and maintain our NEM 2 status. And so that was always the goal in deploying the solar first, and then the energy storage thereafter once we've locked in the NEM 2 rate tariff. To answer your initial question, yes, absolutely. So these are the conversations we're going to have once we finish the solar, probably Q2 next year, Q3. where we'll look to see what Menlo Park's goals are, those resiliency goals, how long do we want to plan for a backup power system to support those essential loads. And then unlike a fossil fuel generator, the energy storage systems are not sitting idly waiting for that outage. We're cycling them daily to play what we call peak shaving, so reduce those peak demand charges, which can be quite substantial, as well as play that time of use arbitrage game. So reduce our export during the times of day when solar export has little value, put that into our battery bank, and then utilize that during the on-peak hours when grid energy is more expensive. So we can enhance the economics with an energy storage system. And then in conversations with the city, we'll determine what type of reserve or what's our ultimate battery capacity when we plan for our outage scenarios.
Great. Curious, how does the solar system here, City Hall, library, and gymnastics center interplay with the EV charging on site? Is there a connection there that's sort of beneficial? Or
So, I mean,
it's just a matter of how many electrons you use?
yeah, I think the zooming out level, the more renewable energy we have, the more we can cover. But as far as like a direct, electrons from the panel going into the cars, that depends on the system configuration. And so for the chargers that we have now that are connected to the electrical panel here at City Hall, some of that is being fed by the existing solar, and the new rooftop and the new carports will be feeding the building as well. But then some of our longer term EV charging plans, that would be on a dedicated service. And so if you think like the connection there, it would have no direct connection to the solar. But the net benefit, especially within like PCE's territory, we're able to provide for and offset or provide for the use of those electrons with renewable generation.
And the last question I had was just curious how the power gets from the gymnastics building to the pool equipment. Was there already a connection, or did you have to go underground or overhead, or? So
there are existing conduits that run from this building actually to the existing solar that's on the gymnastic roof now, and then there's an electrical room in the, it's a room between the pool and the gymnastics. And so fortunately there was enough space in the panel there that they didn't have to run a new conduit across. But the tentative plan at one time was to bore and send a new connection back over here. But as far as like the connection between the two, those buildings are fairly well integrated. And yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, okay. Any other clarifying questions? Okay. Ms. Lana, do we have any public comment on this item?
Check. Okay. We are on item D3, update on installation of solar at city facilities. If you'd like to make a public comment, the cards over there. If you're online, you can hit the raise hand button, and if you're calling in, you can press *9. Don't see any hands online or cards in the room, so we can close public comment on item D3 and return the meeting to the chair.
Great, I'll open it up for discussion. And do you need a motion on this item?
No.
It's just information.
Okay.
I think the big thing if
How can we help?
yes, exactly. So the construction of the carports will be significant starting at the end of January. We'll be closing the parking lot for 3 to 5 weeks. And so
Half of it or all of it?
So if you're coming in from the entrance on Laurel Street closest to the existing array, basically everything from that drive aisle to the building would be open, but everything that drive aisle to the gymnastics center would be closed. And so 2/3, I think it's probably more fair to say will be closed during that time.
So we can, if the EQC is interested, we could, share special updates that you can share with your communities. Definitely checking the website because, as I mentioned, this is part of the PCE partnership, but we also are finishing the microgrid at BHCC, and there will be parking lot closure at Kelly Field as well. And so we could, maybe send that out in an email to you all, just kind of highlight where it is in the digest so you can forward that along or just be aware of it. And then if you have any ideas for how we can celebrate the installation, we talked to the youth advisory committee about their interest in maybe doing an art contest or postcards in the future related to this project. And we're still compiling interest there. But if anyone from this group is interested in helping kind of the next phase of welcoming these panels into our community and talking about them, we're open to that partnership as well. I know PCE offered a ribbon cutting at one point. If the EQC is interested in that and having staff pursue that, we could look into that as well.
Thank you. I'm so excited to see this project. We were talking about it years ago and here it is happening. So I love the idea of being on the celebration committee. If you need someone from this group.
Yeah, it will substantially change how our campus looks.
Okay.
Yeah, with the carports, we'll have renderings to share.
Very exciting. And just thank you, Ori, for all your hard work on all of this. And it's exciting to hear about the savings and the future resilience. So and in terms of eating our, how do they say, dog fooding, we're doing it. We're doing it as a city so we can be a model and a leader and encourage others. So well done. In terms of communication, I would encourage in addition to the city communications, I find in Menlo to be particularly helpful, and they're usually very responsive. If you say, can you note this thing happening, if it's really impacting the city, they're very responsive. And I can share their email if you don't already have it.
That's a great idea. I don't think press has been a part of our strategy so far, so.
Yeah, and maybe even in the Almanac.
Next door.
Community.
Next door. Yeah, all of these places. And I imagine we can all help with that if needed.
Those are great ideas.
I mean, if the city had something in mind to do a celebration when it's completed that involved inviting the community to come and celebrate somehow, that could be an opportunity to engage the community just on building electrification in general. And maybe something to celebrate might excite people to join the party. And to Commissioner Headley's point, it's great that the city's doing it themselves, and while also asking the community to think about doing it as well. But the city's leading the way. I think that'd be a good message, and could be an opportunity for all kinds of groups to table at the event about building electrification. I mean, I guess it could be a smaller version of Love Our Earth, or and maybe those are too close to each other in time. So maybe I'll take everything back, but just a thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's useful.
Happens as part of Love Our Earth month.
Right, I was thinking about that. Yeah. But we do want to stay hyper vigilant in getting them actually installed.
Well, it's always, I feel like, April is this big push. And if it is not all complete by April, it's nice to have other reasons to celebrate our planet and all of the climate solutions that we have that are available. So if we celebrate in June or July, that's fine.
Well, there could be a ribbon cutting even if the last electron hasn't been installed.
I was imagining, I don't know if we want to brainstorm here, but given that agenda item D2 went away, I'm feeling spaciousness. Feel free to cut me off.
Yours.
I was imagining a drawing where people can, for every electrification measure they did in their own house, they could be entered into a drawing for something cool related to all of this. as a way to get people involved. And, there's a lot we don't know because some things are permitted and other things are not. Could be a way to gather information, encourage people to do.
Yeah, it could be in the form of a survey or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking about, there was an event in Palo Alto where they gave away ice cream and somehow it was like just a huge, everyone was showed up for this free ice cream. So if it was in the summer, especially, there could be like free ice cream and solar panel celebration and electrification, how-tos and
Party.
be a party. Yeah.
I keep thinking about the car park, so the solar panels that shade the cars and emphasizing the shade. So have your ice cream cone sitting in like a lounge chair with a straw hat under the shady, old timey shade structure / solar panel.
And I don't know, Ross, if you have successful outreach initiatives that are worth sharing, or if this is all exciting and new.
Yeah, I love the celebratory conversations. I know our marketing team has offered a ribbon cutting to every one of our member agencies, so they would love to support, your vision and however we can help contribute. Absolutely.
Ross, other cities that have completed a project like this, do you recall any sort of events they had in conjunction with it that we might think about here that we haven't already discussed?
Yeah, oftentimes, so we have had, senators come out. We've had, Los Banos is our service territory outside of San Mateo County. They actually threw quite a celebration with dancers and food. Most of them have been more of a kind of formal ribbon cutting where we have the giant scissors and we flip the switch and energize the system. And thereafter, just like a social gathering. We haven't had, tabling where other, vendors or participants would set up a table. A little bit more low key than that, but yeah, more or less just a fun celebration. And again, happy to support or lead that effort however you guys see fit.
Local assembly member and senator for that event.
Yep,
I also
exactly.
wonder what would be meaningful to city staff that's been working so hard. And PTE staff too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as Rachel mentioned, really like the using some of the momentum around the communications for, communicating, there's going to be parking disruptions and other things, right? If we can use that inertia to invite people to imagine, what's it going to look like when the fences come down and it's done, and what does that mean? That's something that we've been really excited about. We're talking about.
Too bad we can't say how many tons of carbon dioxide are being removed because we're already on energy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless Ross, there's something we're missing there. Like, does this actually help your overall strategy?
So from a decarbonization perspective, not much, right? I mean, we're 100% carbon free. It will help us with our 100% renewable goals. So any peaker plants that are used during non-peak hours, we offset through clean energy, renewable energy certificates. So the solar production will help directly support our renewable energy goals, even though we're already 100% carbon free.
Any further discussion on this item?
The only other thing to add is outside of, so Ori had mentioned the installation of the carports will be the most disturbing activity. I will say that they go up quite quickly. We're talking about 3, maybe 4 weeks, and we gave ourselves a buffer week in there, but we do hope to accelerate that timeline and beat the window when we are looking to take the majority of the parking lot. And then the other thing to flag, and this will be working with city staff directly, is the City Hall project will require a utility shutdown so we can actually interconnect and make the final connection for the solar photovoltaic system. And so that's the last step of the project. We'll literally have everything built, coordinate that utility shutdown again with the city staff, as well as PG&E, and we'll make that final connection. Sometimes we do that, first thing in the morning. Sometimes we'll do that on weekends. Again, we'll just work with the staff to make sure that there's least amount of disturbance when we do de-energize the entire facility, but we will need to de-energize the facility. And then last thing I will say before I sign off is, we're working with 16 other agencies. Rachel and Ori have been superstars. I don't think we've had as much support from city staff as from them. So thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Ori. It's truly been a pleasure.
We know and we are grateful. And then Commissioner Headley had another comment.
Yeah, in terms of the communication, I'm imagining that families that are enrolled in the gymnastics program and dance and swimming, I would imagine we would have like all their emails.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that part of your plan to like email them like, hey,
Yeah.
carpool?
And so it's gymnastics, it's pool. So we're already in coordination with the Menlo Swim and Sport and the Team Sheeper folks, also for the recreation center. So we've been coordinating closely with our library and community services department. And so in the new year, we'll have those go out to everyone who's registered for a class as well. So
Great.
In addition to the field, yeah.
Soccer or whatever, baseball. Yeah. Will there also be signs in those public places if people are not signed up? Okay.
Yes, yeah. So we're thinking like we'll have printed signs that then direct folks through a QR code to the webpage, and so the current status will continue to be updated, and then we'll also provide alternate parking maps, so you could see based on which facility, which is the closest alternate parking location for you, which ones will have accessible parking, and then we're also going to be using the monitor ads, which there's one here, but not in the other facilities. But yeah, I think it's the printed signs, and then the 8-frame signs will be printed, put out, and you can scan the QR code tonight on your way out.
Yeah, we've been told from McMillan, our installers, that our City Hall campus is the most lively of all their city sites. And so I think that's a testament to how much people love our facilities, and we just want them to their love to grow even more with the solar installation. So keep the message positive, and if you can, don't drive to City Hall, and keep in mind those alternate locations. We have other parking lots. So
Commissioner Angel.
I just wanted to add to that, maybe to, I don't know, somehow facilitate people carpooling, if there's any way to like set up a little web page or something, or like help people connect, and then promoting bicycling, of course, would be so cool. And then I just had one thought about the celebration, and that tying it into maybe the summer solstice could be really cool, and just playing up the whole sun.
Yeah.
yeah, carpooling might be easier if we like inspire the rec center, like with groups that are already, like ask them to kind of coordinate their classes or their teams.
Like I had my kids at gymnastics, and you're sitting there on those bleachers watching your kids. It's like, just turn around and talk to somebody. Where do you live? Can we carpool? Get those conversations going. But yeah, anything you guys can do to help them connect is good.
Great.
Sorry, did we mention the city's shuttles too? Yes, another thing to promote.
Yeah, no, that could definitely be a part of our message.
I'm kind of thinking this is a task to also pull in the Complete Streets Commission. When we're talking about all these other forms of transport applying, they would probably have great ideas too.
We were going to share this presentation with Parks and Rec and Library Commission, so they're aware, and we also send it to Complete Streets. Cool.
Good. Okay, move on to item D4. Emissions Reductions Impact Study Ad Hoc Subcommittee Report out.
Thank you, Russ.
Awesome.
Yes,
Thank you, everyone.
you.
Pleasure.
Russ.
Have a nice night. Take care.
Good night.
So Commissioners Hill and Kissel will present this item.
Well,
Share my screen.
maybe I'll start, and Brian, you can add color commentary.
Brian, we can't hear you if you said something.
I just raised my finger and said, that sounds good.
We can't see anything. We're accessing the file to put it up. There we are. Okay. So this is an update from the subcommittee that is working on the greenhouse gas emissions and helping the city to understand, seeing if we could help the city to understand the greenhouse gas emissions trends, if the inventory that most recently came out is something that gives us visibility into whether we're going to make the 2030 net zero goal, and how that data could be shared with the community in a more transparent way. And so we looked at the most recent greenhouse gas inventory, and as you can see, this chart here that is on the screen shows the greenhouse gas emissions of the city by the sectors that are tracked in this inventory from 2005 to 2023. And you'll see that things came down when particularly the city signed up with PCE. So thank you, PCE, for getting us over to fewer emissions. But the trend since that point has been pretty flat. And so the subcommittee determined that the city is not on a trajectory for the 90% reduction in emissions by 2030 goal that is called out in the city's climate action plan. And given that, we thought that it came to us that it was very clear that the two blue chunks, so to speak, are the places where we would find the most emissions reduction if the city were to be able to make 2030. And those are building energy with the dark blue and on-road transport with the light blue. And the idea is that, as a subcommittee, if we're spending our time looking at this, it seemed as though we might not focus really so much on the gap analysis between where the city is and where but maybe we could support staff in trying to determine which projects that the city might be able to undertake that are within the city's span of control, that are within the city's monetary possibilities, would have the most emissions impact. And so we believe that this is the best use of our time, and we wanted to return to the full EQC to get your approval of pivoting toward trying to come up with recommendations for the highest impact initiatives. So that's one thing. I requested the EQC. The other is we had a couple of updates on the assumption that this pivot was suitable and acceptable. Which is to say, Rachel, pushed forward on the next steps that we had identified, which were that if we were going to figure out how the city was going to best spend its time and money to cut emissions, that we might call in some experts. And we brainstormed some possibilities of different places we might be able to get some expertise. And also saw that the County of San Mateo and the City of San Mateo had some wonderful studies on this exact topic for their areas. What happened was that Rachel had a back and Ori had a back and a forth with the Stanford University Impact Lab, which is designed to accept and bring on city and government projects for different labs and professors' classes to work on in this field. And we were accepted by the Stanford University Impact Lab. So one of the classes, the one that is on sustainable cities, is going to form a consulting group and work on answering this question for us. And so toward that end, this is an update as of like a minute ago practically. We are going to then make a few recommendations about how we proceed next. One is that we're not going to proceed with any RFPs for consultants. But the second is that we might change the subcommittee to align with the timing of this Stanford project, which is to say that the Stanford project wouldn't begin until next quarter. So it would be March. I think the kickoff is in March. So the team, we were all thinking that perhaps we might dissolve the subcommittee, which has done marvelous yeoman work up till now, and reform a new subcommittee in March in order to work on an almost weekly basis with this little consulting group that we would have, and report back out in, say, June. So 2 requests. 1, approve this, and then number 2, shut us down. And we will resume in June. Did I capture that correctly, Brian and Rachel?
I'll let Brian add first, and then I have a comment.
Yeah, I think just to add some color commentary is, when our first kind of charter for this was to look at our various CAP goals and say, how are we progressing and are we on track? And if we're not on track, what should we do? And I think we kind of came to the conclusion that we're not on track. And rather than kind of boil the ocean and look at all the different ways we could potentially reduce carbon, take advantage of some studies that others have done to identify where the biggest carbon generation is happening, and in particular, what the city could do and should do to address those. So it's kind of the Pareto analysis of bang for the buck. And so as we pointed out, the 2 big categories are building and transportation. So the question is, in those 2 categories, what could we and what should we be doing? And so I think the combination of the research that San Mateo City and County have done and the research that Stanford can do will be able to give the city council and city staff some concrete recommendations on where to channel limited resources, both financial resources and human resources. So rather than just saying we're not on track, that's interesting. But what's more interesting is to say, and here are the places we would recommend that you focus your efforts for maximum impact. And the maximum impact is a combination of, where do we have a unique ability relative to what PCE could do, or San Mateo or the state could do with various laws. So what's unique to the city, and where are we likely to be successful? Because there could be programs and initiatives that we would recommend that may not be successful because the stakeholders, the constituents, may not be responsive. So if we say, well, we want industrial properties to reduce their carbon output, but we don't have any mechanism to control that, or likewise with residential homeowners, whatever, it's not only where do we get the bang for the buck for the effort, but where's the probability of success? And we compare those 2, then be able to say, here are the few areas that we would suggest the city focus. That's the end of my color commentary.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll just clarify, the Stanford Impact Lab is slightly separate. We've been learning about all in Stanford silos. There still remains an opportunity to work with them. I think they like to kind of apply for grant funding with cities or partners, or receive funding from partners. This is their Sustainable Cities like urban design course with Rick Koss. So yes, it's a very structured course, and we have the professors kind of engagement and support to make sure our end deliverable is useful. And then in kind of disbanding this subcommittee and creating the new subcommittee, we have the opportunity to add 1 more commissioner if there's interest in working closely with Stanford over the winter.
Spring quarter or winter?
Springs. Be helpful. To get that right for you all. Yeah.
Zach, we thought with your Stanford connections, you might want to join us.
Sure. You can do it.
And I think are we still in the presentation part of this?
Yeah.
Okay. So hold your horses. Anything else? I think that's think that's good. We can have that presentation.
Great, thank you. Do we have any clarifying questions from the EQC before we take public comment? I guess, are you able to speak a little bit more about the appendix you included and what you
Oh, yeah.
what you gleaned from that and how we might apply it here? Do they get a consultant to do this and we need to run our numbers, or can we just use this to run with it?
So we cast our net about a fair bit to try to find different examples of places where we might be able to get this. And our thought was, if we cannot engage a consulting firm or a Stanford class or the Impact Lab, then could we ask a favor of, say, one of these other municipalities? And so the report that the city of San Mateo had in their cap with quantification of the emissions reduction for each project was exactly what we were hoping to get. And so we thought that we might approach them and ask if they would share some of the data, or if there was some way we could reuse it. And so in order to give an example of what an output of, say, the Stanford class might be, and more specifically what the San Mateo study was, we included this little sample, but it is not a preview of what we might do. It's just that we noted in a few places that they had gotten big emissions cuts in the same areas that we were looking at. So a city is a city, so to speak, and we thought we might be able to borrow quite a bit. And we still think so, but we will not start working on that until March.
Yeah, thanks. I found the chart really helpful, just giving us kind of orders of magnitude of where we can make progress. Any other clarifying questions? Okay, do we have any public comment on this item?
Let me open up public comment for item D4, which is the emissions reductions impact study ad hoc subcommittee report out. I have 2 comment cards in the room. And if you're on Zoom, you can hit the raise hand button or press *9 if you're calling in, and we'll be able to unmute you. And while we wait for folks on Zoom, I will get us started in the room. We will start with Jeff Schmidt, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everybody. I think everybody knows me. I'm going to speak as an individual council member. I had 3 really quick things. I'm not speaking for the group, just I decided to pop in and not attend the Safer Bay meeting, but come here with this group, as I like to do. Yeah. One is I just want to say how much I appreciate being able to hear these conversations firsthand. I feel like it's always a deeper learning experience for me to hear the discussion and deliberation and see the presentations and everything else. So I treat this as one of my primary learning opportunities for all these kind of topics. So I really appreciate that. Second quick thing is I'm incredibly grateful for this group. I realized toward the end of the year and the holidays that I get to tell Rachel that a little more from time to time when she comes to council, but how incredibly appreciative I am of everybody in this team and what you do. It's very important to me as an individual, to the city, to plan all the good things we know. So I just wanted to be able to say that in person and, express gratitude for what staff does, what the group does. The third quick thing, and one of the reasons for visiting was just an awareness. Last night at council, toward the end, we were divvying up assignments. So when you join council, you get to also join a lot of different organizations and groups. Just for your awareness as you're thinking about the subcommittee item, we're going to have a liaison role for the city council to Samtrans and the Transit Authority, both transportation oriented. So when I saw the subcommittee's report about potentially looking at transportation ideas, just know that we didn't assign it last night. We kicked it over to January, but there won't be a seat at the table, but there'll be more information coming into the city because Justin and the team recognized that was a little bit of a gap. And that might allow us the opportunity for the holy grail I know we used to talk about when I was in this room, which was, climate, transportation, and housing. What's the intersection? So transportation had always been a little bit of a gap, but I think it's fantastic that we're going to have this information now coming into the city. You'll be able to tune into the council meetings, or at least watch the tape and get report outs for whoever those liaisons are. So just wanted to flag that because, I don't know that people stick around to the bitter end of the council meetings, but that'll be a great new resource as you're thinking about what to do with this subcommittee. So want to make sure everybody's aware. Thanks again. Have a great holiday.
Thank you for your comments.
Brian Schmidt, when you're ready.
Thanks, Brian Schmidt again with Menlo Spark. I wanted to thank the subcommittee for its work. Menlo Spark has been asserting something broadly similar to what has been done here for almost a year, but we haven't done the analysis that you all did to show that that's actually the case. So we really appreciate that. And then true to my own personal nature, I'm going to quibble a little bit. I think it's completely correct that it's a 90% emissions reduction by 2030. But to me, the real goal is carbon neutrality, climate neutrality by 2030, which also included a 10% carbon dioxide reduction as part of it, and which is still on the table as far as I understand. So that should be always kept in mind. And then as for what to do next, Menlo Spark did its own analysis of this in September, a presentation to our board, which I'd be happy to share with the committee. And looking from different outcomes from worst to best outcomes. One thing we haven't yet discussed tonight is, I think, reacting to this information is probably going to require looking at a deadline other than 2030. But then to our mind, a best possible outcome means what additional steps will be taken to hit this deadline as opposed to missing it like we're likely to do. The one that I have been looking at quite a bit is end of flow of natural gas, which seems to be an option. I haven't had a chance to look at the San Mateo information or their cap. I did today finally get a closer look at the city of Mountain View's end of flow provision, which they are aiming for a way too far off time of 2045. I was pleased, however, to learn that in their April 22nd, 2025 decision to do this, they have a 2-year planning process. So they're not just putting that out there and walking away. They are planning for this. So there might be a lot of useful information for the EQC to be taking a look at. And then I'll also note that the staff speculated that there could be extremely expensive ramifications of end of flow. And I have some quibbles with that as well, but we can find out. But I'm basically saying that might be worth looking at, maybe working together with outside consultants or with Stanford on stuff, on information like that. So I really appreciate this, and I'll look forward to next steps.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any other cards in the room or hands online, so we will close public comment on item D4 and return the meeting to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We can now open it up for EQC discussion and a motion. I could start, I guess. Thank you, subcommittee, for your work. I am in favor of what you've recommended. So I think what you outlined is exciting to partner up with some different organizations and even look to other cities. I think City of San Mateo, along with Menlo Park, is one of the true leaders in the county, along with the county. So I think they're a good jurisdiction to partner with on learning some of this stuff and implementing. But yeah, I'm in favor of, I guess, disbanding this current version and creating a new version and inviting another commissioner to join if they would like to.
Did you want to make a motion?
I don't know. I want to make sure that there's no other discussion.
I'm supportive of that as well.
Yeah, I support it, and I'm happy to join the new commission or subcommittee.
So yeah,
I had
can you turn that into a motion.
I Okay. To disband, a motion second to disband the emissions reductions impact ad hoc subcommittee and form the Sustainable Cities Project ad hoc subcommittee with Commissioners Hill, Kissel, and Meyer. Do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Hernandez. Do we have a second? Okay. And second by Commissioner Angel. Do I need to repeat the motion or can we go to roll call?
Good to go.
All right, Chair McKenna,
Aye.
Commissioner Angel,
Hi.
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
Commissioner Headley, Commissioner Hernandez.
Aye.
Commissioner Kissel,
Aye.
Vice Chair Meyer.
Aye.
The motion passes with 7 in favor. Thank you.
Do we have this, did we set a schedule for that committee or do we need to do that?
Oh. Well, we talked about it, so
Yeah.
it would,
Start in March.
They would
and then
need to
June?
start in mid-March
Yeah.
and then run through the end of June.
yes. Is that cool?
Yeah, I just didn't know if we needed to sort of rubber stamp that or memorialize it or whatever.
We'll put in the minutes and then update
That's
the
just
work
great.
plan. We're getting ready for the holiday meal.
Don't say great.
We'll memorialize it in the minutes and then in the work plan.
Great.
Thank you.
So we are moving on to item E, reports and announcements. We can now hear reports and announcements from staff and commissioners. Staff, would you like to make any reports or announcements?
Yeah, I have a few. Want to start with the closure of City Hall, December 24th to January 1st. We'll open again on January 2nd. Of course, police and library services will have a different schedule, so check in with those departments if you use those services. We have an open RFP right now, request for proposals for our e-bike and electric vehicle voucher program, and that closes January 12th. So if you know of any community-based organizations or nonprofits, I'm happy to share the link with them directly. It's posted on Planet Bids on the city's website.
Can you explain that a little bit more? What the opportunity is?
Yeah, sure. And I'm thinking back if we've had a meeting since council kind of approved this program. Okay.
It's not ringing a bell.
Oh, great. Okay. So city council approved a number of enhancements to our home upgrade program in order to be responsive to the EQC and staff's recommendations to spend the first half of our grant funds by March 2026. So some of the kind of larger pieces of that project include having a citywide e-bike and EV voucher program with the similar eligibility as our Zelly zero emission landscaping equipment voucher. So folks who are in communities with high air pollution burdens, who are over 65 and older, people living in District 1 or people qualifying by income. So that program we put on RFP to work with a community-based organization or nonprofit to distribute those vouchers. The other pieces that city council wanted us to move on was allocating more funding for outreach and marketing. And so we will be actually filming a case study at Miss Williams Homes tomorrow. And hope to get that video out in the community early in the new year. We also will be launching a matching rebate program in the new year. PCE is just reviewing the contract amendment for that. And our rental bundles launched and city council authorized expanding that program if we're successful. So Ms. Juanita Croft at Bellhaven Community Development Fund is going to be your point of contact if you want one of those bundles. She's already purchased the equipment, and I believe tonight is one of her first outreach events at the Safer Bay workshop where she's signing folks
What's
up.
in that bundle?
So there's portable heat pumps, there's air purifiers and extra filters, there's an induction cook hob and cookware, a heated blanket, and folks don't have to take the whole bundle, but they can work with the BHCDF team to pick and choose.
Right.
It's
So
really
exciting.
exciting.
All of it is exciting.
What are the dollar values for the vouchers?
The dollar values for the vouchers would match what PCE is offering. So I believe it's 2,000 for an EV and 1,000 for an e-bike. So, if our partner agencies want to propose a different structure, we have that flexibility. Yeah, so I'll leave it there for the home upgrade program, and I'm happy to share kind of additional updates. We do have a new program manager at Peninsula Clean Energy, Paige Garcia, who's coming from Pioneer Energy, and so we're excited to work with her and getting these things going. Yeah, do you have any updates?
Just I think we talked about this before. So just again, to check out the menlopark.gov/city solar new webpage, where we'll be posting updates on a regular basis. The other thing is we're looking at the final 10% of the city facilities with that are still using gas water heaters. To hopefully tackle those through another round of participation in the PG&E government K-12 energy efficiency program. So for reference, that's the 2 city-owned facilities that are at least being the Gatehouse and the Menlo Atherton Corporate Nursery at Elon Park, and then the final city-owned and operated facility that has the gas water heaters is the Arriaga Family Gymnasium. And so we've had site visits and are working through the agreement for our GK12 round 3. And so hope to have updates on that in the new year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that triggered thank you for me on other updates related to home upgrade. Okay. The other item that the EQC had prioritized was offering solar and battery first. And so we've worked out with PCE that they can scope that with the customer at the beginning of the project, and we can lead with that in our marketing and messaging. But the electrification, as far as it makes sense with like utility connections and building permits, needs to happen first, and then the battery comes in. But we're working on kind of a more seamless transition, so the homeowner doesn't feel like they're participating in 2 programs. So that's really exciting. And then Corey's been working really closely with our building department too on our code cycle change 2025. We have the whole new building standards from the state, and we'll have our local amendments that we'll be enforcing. And so if anyone has questions about the code change, there's information on our website about that.
The EV vouchers, is there any component of that that would help the new EV owner with charging infrastructure?
There could be. We haven't seen the proposals yet, but yeah, that's
Something to think about.
yeah. Thank you.
Whether that be just, the cost of the charger or the electrical work that might be needed to install a charger.
Mm.
Could be something to think about.
That's great.
And then on the, I don't have an e-bike. I don't know if they have a special charging infrastructure. I think you just plug it into the wall. I could be wrong. On the home upgrade solar battery, what does a homeowner have to do to get solar and a battery? Do they have to fully upgrade their home to electric? Do they have to do anything?
Yeah, they and this offer is available citywide. They do have to qualify for the program, so be at 120% AMI is really our biggest qualifier. And they do have to electrify either their HVAC or their water heater.
Thank you. Any other staff reports or announcements?
No, thank you for the extra ones.
Any commissioner reports or announcements?
Well, today was like the several pay meeting at Fairhaven. I registered a bunch of people who didn't know how to register, so they just text me their names and I put their names on the list. And there's also like
This is the upcoming meeting in January?
no, the one today.
Oh, today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also I think it's Melo Together who's working on collecting signatures for a petition to fund transportation for I think the Alameda, San Mateo, Santa Clara, San Francisco, and Marin County thing. Yeah,
FP 63.
yeah, because I think the funds are going to end up for the transportation, and they want to increase like the sales tax by 10%. In every county except San Francisco. Yeah. So we're going to be good to look at.
Yes. Thank you. I'll make a couple quick announcements unless there's anyone else. I guess I would just let everyone know that, you don't already know, Peninsula Clean Energy, sort of retired their Community Advisory Committee, which was like a 15-member committee. And they, are moving to, what they're calling the Community Feedback Forum. So it's an attempt to, get more voices into the conversation. You know, the CAC was a Brown Act body, so it could be challenging for folks to participate and limited in what they could do. The Community Feedback Forum will probably have 4 meetings throughout the year in locally, and then probably two in Los Banos where they also serve. But they'll have like specific topics. You know, could be around the health impacts of electrification or other benefits of the programs that PCE offers. And it's, I think, envisioned to be an opportunity for pretty much anybody that wants to come to the meeting to have their voice heard, to participate, learn about the great programs that PCE has, or provide input or feedback on what PCE could be doing differently or better for the community. So I'll be happy to sort of keep you all posted and in the community that's listening right now, when those meetings are going to be held. But all that information is also will be available on PCE's website. But I invite you all to participate in those meetings and let other people know about those opportunities to get involved.
Will those be at their office in Redwood City?
They're going to be at different locations, most likely. The planning is still in the works. But yeah, probably at least 2 meetings will be in Los Banos. The rest will be sort of in different locations around San Mateo County, I think is the plan. Yeah, so I want to share that. And then I guess I just wanted to give an update. Commissioner Headley and I made a presentation, I think at the beginning of the year, on plastics, single-use plastics and artificial turf. I think the EQC made a recommendation that the city ban those, that artificial turf be banned. And I just want to let you all know that I've made a couple public comments to the Parks and Rec Commission, letting them know about what we had recommended. And we've been working with one commissioner to sort of move that forward, exploring different ways that we could sort of move towards that goal. One possible concept is maybe a pilot program with an organization to sort of learn how to manage a couple of our grass fields, athletic fields, organically and more sustainably. So just wanted to let you all know that this item is still important to me and to, I think, to the commission, and that we're sort of doing what we can to keep it moving forward. And working, we'll, you know, obviously it's all in conjunction with the city and what the city wants to do on that, but just wanted to give you an update that that's still alive, that possibility.
Thanks for working on that.
Huh?
Thanks for working on that.
Oh, sure, yeah. Any other reports or announcements? Okay. Oh, do we do public comment?
Let me see. Let me just double check. Brian, do you have anything?
No, I don't. Thank you.
We don't do public comment on this item, but we could do public comment on the informational items, which is the work plan. Is it related to the work plan at all?
I can fit it in there.
Shoehorn it in.
Okay, then we'll move on to item F, informational items. Our next item is informational items. Informational items are transmitted to the EQC in staff's efforts to provide updates. Informational items are not action items. However, city council, staff, or members of the public may ask questions or make comment. Are there questions or comments from the EQC on informational item F1 2025-2026 Environmental Quality Commission Work Plan? Seeing none, Ms. Flandre, do we have any public comment?
I do have one card in the room from Brian Schmidt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let me get your timer going and you can start when you're ready. And this is for public comment on item F. If anyone online would like to raise your hand to make public comment on our informational item F1 2025-2026 Environmental Quality Commission work? Okay, when you're ready.
Thanks, Brian Schmidt from Menlo Spark, and on the assumption that the work plan addresses the home upgrade program. I wanted to mention that last week Menlo Spark met with Actera to discuss virtual power plants. And they have some interesting connections on that issue. And in that discussion, I mentioned Menlo Park's home upgrade program and how they're incorporating solar and battery into the home upgrade program. I thought that might be something that would dovetail pretty well with the virtual power plants, although the virtual power plants could work on a broader variety of issues, not just batteries. So I just wanted to bring that up as something as Menlo Park and its partners get people more involved and more electrified and get batteries. This is something else that could be brought into the mix. For some people, they might find it attractive to save some money and help out our grid at the same time. So let me bring that up. I will get some more information and happy to pass that along. Thanks.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
comment. And we'll just check to make sure we don't have any hands online for item F1, our work plan. No hands online or cards in the room, so we can close public comment. And we're trying to be easy.
All right, with that, we can adjourn. Thanks, everyone.